If you ever write a song, it's a problem. If you write a song and people like it, it's a bigger problem, right? You can't get out. One day you can't write songs, it's probably good. You can go and do all the things that normal people do.
I remember meeting you one long
I was born in 1956 in Coventry, England. And then when I was about 8, we moved to Australia on the a £10 POM deal. We actually deposited ourselves at Rooks Road, Nuttawading Hostel. Also, that was the first place I remember even doing any singing as well, because they used to have the toilets and the bathrooms all in one big room, and it was very echoey. And I remember I used to sing that song Sweet Pea by Tommy Rowe, and I thought my voice sounded good, which I don't know. I don't think anybody's ever thought my voice sounded all that good.
Oh, sweet pea, come on and dance with me. Come on, come on, come on and dance with me.
They used to have a tannoy going where all the kids played, and there was always the sounds of the day. So it's 1965 when it came, so it was the Beatles and the Animals and the Stones, and I could feel the fever of rock and roll, then the pop bands. You know, I was really excited by it. I started putting pictures on my wall when I was 9. The first thing I did, I remember musically, was something called Flashco, which was miming. My name was Terry Tinsel. It was in the glam rock. And we mimed to All the Young Dudes by Mott the Hoople and Stay With Me by The Faces. It was very exciting, so I thought, hey, this is quite good. I started learning when I was about 18. I wasn't very good at playing songs, anybody else's songs. So then I would actually write my own songs. Really depressing stuff. It was very depressing. My songs were all E minor, A minor, so it was all like, now I'm dead, and when I'm dead I won't be around anymore, and are you gonna miss me? Oh, what did I do that was so wrong? So as soon as I started writing chords, I thought I'll form a little band, and I formed a little kind of trio called Feathers, which was me, Leone, and this guy called Ian Nee. What we did first was go into this radio show, and it's kind of like the Gong Show. You play your songs and they ring a bell, ding, ding, ding.
This!
Anyway, we won with a song that I wrote called Helpless Sparrow. I was listening to it the other day, it's not too bad a song either.
Oh, helpless sparrow, where do we go? Oh, I know.
Feathers kind of stopped, but then I thought, oh well, we'll make a band called Subway, and we'll add drums and bass. And that can cover up a multitude of sins. We played at a place called Bayswater Youth Club. That was our first major gig. I remember we played a Rolling Stones song, and as soon as we finished, somebody in the audience goes, hey, play a Rolling Stones song. I said, we just did. We just played. They couldn't recognize it was so bad. Anyway, so that was Subway, and then I ran into Bruce Milne, and it was a time when punk was just beginning, and that changed everything. The punk thing started happening. You started reading about the Sex Pistols and the Clash. And it was getting very exciting. You knew there was something coming along. There was going to be a big change. Even the bands in Melbourne like The Sports and Bleeding Hearts, there was something new about the very garage rock. You kept hearing songs, and you'd buy these albums like the Nuggets album. There was the Boys Next Door scene. They were the kind of kingpins. I mean, Nick Cave has always been charisma, on legs. He just walks in, everything changes.
It was a very exciting time because we're all sort of young and enthusiastic. The Melbourne punk scene was such a tiny one at first, in certainly 76, 77. Everyone knew everyone else. And then it got bigger as venues started happening, because originally all the gigs were in people's houses. The first pub that started putting on bands was the Tiger Lounge in Richmond, and my memory is that Keith Glass's band, the KGB, had the Wednesday night residency, and then the Boys Next Door took over that residency, and that's the first time that really these bands started really playing, and that's where you went every Wednesday night.
The scene was very small until the ballroom opened, the Crystal Ballroom.
And then Dolores San Miguel took over booking gigs at the Seaview Ballroom in St Kilda, and that would have been early 78 in my mind. From that sort of mid-78 period on, the whole thing just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the Boys Next Door would play there on a Tuesday night, and there'd be 400 people there.
I think we played the second time, and a band called Two-Way Garden. Two-Way Garden were friends of Bruce Milne. In Melbourne, I didn't know of any other punk bands, didn't know they existed. All I knew was Bleeding Hearts and The Sports and a couple of those, and Stiletto and things like that. Meeting Bruce, he introduced me to a whole new scene.
I met Rob because I was driving along with a friend and his car pulled up beside mine and they had amps in the back of the car, and I leaned out the window and said, "Are you guys in a band?"
And he said, "Yeah, we're in a band. What kind of music do you play?" And I don't know why, until this day, I've never known why, instead of saying the kind of usual suspects like the Stones and the Beatles, the punk thing was happening, and I just said New York Dolls and Iggy Pop and these punk bands, and Bruce must have been stunned. And then we drove off, and he drove off, and that was it, until in the Swinburne paper, which was the yellow one, there was an ad.
And I put an ad in the Swinburne campus newsletter and said, Subway, that was the band's name at the time, "If you exist, contact me."
It was as if I formulated the idea of where I was going to go as soon as Bruce asked that question. It was kind of a life changer, really. The next day I went to my girlfriend Leonie, who was still in Subway there, and said, "We don't need girls in the band anymore." The guitarist, the lead guitarist, he left because we were going to play punk rock, and we got Chris Hunter in. So it was just Chris, Vic, and I, and we were Subway. And that would be 1977. Wasn't great, but we're on our way. I went back and saw Bruce, and Bruce goes, he knows a guy who could be our new guitarist. It's a guy called Rob Wellington. So Rob came around and we had to play out, and he thought we were rubbish, which we were rubbish, and he didn't want to play with us.
I went around and tried out, but I quickly thought they were doing very strummy up and down. They didn't sound very punky, and I said, "I thought you wanted a punk band. You should get me to play guitar, you'll sound punkier."
Talking with him, he goes, "Listen, I'll join the band, but I'm the lead guitarist, right? And you don't play guitar." He told me I can't play guitar. We're never allowed to play guitar in the Fiction. So right, can change the name from the Subway, we call the Fiction, and the lead guitarist, you're the singer, Vic's the drummer, we'll find a bass player. He came up with the name The Fiction.
Well, I came up with two names, the Faction and the Fiction, and I said, "Which one do you prefer?" And they chose the Fiction. I kind of like the Faction, though.
The name I was going for was The Police. I said that was a stupid name. Did all right for Sting, though.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We played our first gig at Bernhardt's.
First gigs we were playing with this band called News, also called Babies. Bruce Milne started a fanzine called Pulp, and later Fast Forward, which was like the first cassette magazine, which was just genius.
It was very DIY at the time, so I was doing a fanzine. So I did Pulp fanzine in 77 and early 78. Record shops were incredibly important because they were the drop-in community centres for people who are into music.
Roland S. Howard was writing for Pulp, and it was kind of tapping into the very baby scene, punk scene that was happening in Melbourne, and he was giving it away, and he decided he needed a benefit, so we played at the benefit with Boys Next Door, Young Charlatans, News, and I think we opened.
I knew something was happening and it was important. That's why I was trying to document it. Because at the time, you've got to understand, everyone was poo-pooing the music and going, well, this is just garbage. And they were saying exactly the same things they said when rock and roll started.
We played our first gig in, was it April? And we finished off around about November of 1978. We finished off with a really nice headline gig at the Ballroom. I got a bit sick at the end of the year, malnutrition, ended up in bed for days, weeks, and some say months, but I think now it's a bit exaggerated.
He was sick for like months, it was like 6 months and stuff. So after a couple of months, I was like bored and just started writing songs and formed International Exiles.
the band kind of just slipped away until I was sitting around. I went and saw Bruce and I said, listen, I want to make a record.
I started to go with Philip Morland in 77.
His first release was a band called The Spiz. The second release was To A Garden, and we got the third release, which was Things Will Be Different and Take Me I'm Yours.
And Stuart from the band the guitarist, was producing it. And he really wanted to do that, and he had a lot of ideas.
I had no idea what I was doing, so I completely overloaded the tape. I think I only kept the bass and drums for the original recording, and Rob Wellington and I overdubbed guitars over the next weeks at my house.
The record was The Fiction, but it was augmented by Stuart Beattie's guitars, which changed it from being The Fiction to being what became Little Murders. The scene that I was kind of moving with was not going the same way as me. So I knew I had to find a new scene. So I've got this idea. I want to be 60s. It's not really taken off yet. Anyway, I went to England. Everywhere you went, the record shops were playing soul stuff. And then the Specials had their record out while I was there. And there were these girls in two-tone clothes, mod hairstyles. And they were listening to Green Onions by Booker T. And they're dancing in the shop. I'm watching Top of the Pops, and there's madness, and they're wearing the clothes that we wore back at home, the grey jackets and the suits and all those kind of things. I thought, well, shit, I could do something with this. So when I got back, we started looking, and the movement was starting to grow. People bought scooters. And you'd see a guy dressed like a mod, and you'd say, pull him over, come on, we've got this thing going. I released the first single in 1979, and same time I released the single, I became a teacher. So I was playing gigs at night and teaching. At first in 79, 1980, we didn't play so much, it didn't affect me. When we get to 81, 82, it's starting to, it got a little bit hard. When it got to 1983, when I'd play 6 nights a week, that was pretty, I'd turn up with eye makeup on. In 1980, we recorded High School, and that was with Clint in the band. 81 is when the mod thing exploded. We knew about these other bands from Sydney. They were coming down. We had mod magazines. We had mod venues. We dressed in all the right clothes. We would drape our guitars in Union Jacks, and I would put a Union Jack on my guitar, and we had our stage invasions. We were all very informed by everything. So it was all very 60s. It was really exciting.
High school. I've been watching, I know every move.
I don't know why we got to record She Lets Me Know in a major studio, except that I assume Bruce, along with us, really thought we were going places.
I decided to finance a Little Murders single, and we were using Richmond Recorders, which no longer exists, a studio in Adolph Street, Richmond. And we used it partly because Keith was using it for Boys Next Door and I think Go-Betweens. And
It took months to record. Why? Because I still didn't know what I was doing. The reaction to She Lets Me Know was, again, everyone loved it. I insisted that She Lets Me Know, to maintain the quality, be mastered at Studio 301 in Sydney. This is the test pressing that came back from Studio 301, the mastering. And I listened to it and I went, that's terrible! It was incredibly clean and it was really quiet. Just had no guts to it whatsoever. And I went, this is a shit master. It needs to be done again. And Bruce said, we can't afford it.
We had a launch at the Jump Club. We served sandwiches. I always remember we had the drummer's girlfriend cut up sandwiches. When I talked to Stuart, he goes, he didn't get time to actually finish it because it doesn't have the it doesn't have that thing it needed at the end, but there was no more money left. And, sometimes, I feel it was bad for Go-Go Records too.
I just never got involved in It's still a new world to me, financing a record, and unfortunately what I discovered is a record that's 85% done, is not done, and you just have to keep on paying until it is done, and unfortunately it just dragged on. At the time it seemed like a lot of money to me. It was probably a great lesson.
But it took so long. While recording, I went and recorded an independent single, and that was done in one day.
And we released it as the dance set, just to partly fill the gap and partly, I think, to try and get some money to keep paying for the recording.
Little Murders played a gig at the Market Hotel. Play the Market Hotel and have a mod disco. Forget about support bands. It was just very successful. We were getting lots of gigs, and I always remember saying to Dolores, "You give us a lot of gigs, Little Murders. How come?" It's just because you're poor people. And I never actually realised that we were actually one of the bands that were pulling lots of people, and the numbers were growing all the time as this mod thing got going. When it was 1983, when we were basically semi-professional, we were getting wages. The band were trying to get me to give up teaching and go professional and travel around. I always thought I could do teaching and do the band, which I did. Just when it looked like it was going really well, the band breaks up. The band finished in around about 1985. I was kind of like over it because, I'd been gone for quite a few members by then. And I didn't want to be, and I felt, that's it.
Look, my memory is that Little Murders broke up, and that's why we stopped doing records. I know that some stage during the 80s, Paul Elliott at Polyester put out a single.
1985 was the first release on Polyester Records. The manager of Little Murders at the time, he wanted to have a full-time PA system, so he hired my PA system. And then the story is that the Little Murders were playing, and apparently someone walked out with what's called the effects rack. And I think got onto Rob, and he said that he didn't have the money to pay me for the effects rack, but he had this master tape of 100 Drugs. I'd release it on my record label, which I hadn't started then, and I would take all the profit, all the money from the release. But I was over the moon because that was a way to have a record label, and so that was the start of it. And that song, I just thought, was such an incredible song.
Don't know, even though all she needs 100 drugs, 100 times she'll find her own. All she needs.
Bruce thought it was a great idea to put all the songs that we recorded and just put it out. It was a kind of strange time because it should have come out a few years earlier rather than at the end of our career, our bit there, but that's the way it was. After the band dissolved in 1985, I did DJing in clubs and stuff, which gave me some income where I could actually teach, DJ and make music at the same time. So I started DJing at the Rubber Soul, and we opened Barbarella's and Beehive, and then finally in 1990 I got my own club called the Lizard Lounge. I started a record label in 1996, which was called Swerve Records. It was a good excuse to release my records again.
I met Rob in the 90s, and he had been DJing at his Lizard Lounge, and he had this idea to start a label. So I met him through that label and made a bunch of records for him, and then started making Little Murders record, the first of which would have been in about 97.
It got 3.5 stars in Rolling Stone, which is the first time I've been in Rolling Stone album. It was me starting again. And I got a band together again, so I was back on the road again. I always see First Light as the first album I ever made, because it was the first time I went and actually wrote all the songs for it, recorded it all together over a couple of months, and then released it through the Swerve label. And the first gig back after really 15 years or so, proper gig back, I lost my voice.
20th century love and stuff like that.
So this was really a bit of a patchwork. We had got Tony Robinson to join the band now. Mick Barclay still on drums. I rang up Rod Hayward and see if he would come and play some tracks on this. We did a few memorable gigs. One of them was supporting the Buzzcocks, which was fantastic. And we did a power pop event at the Tote. So we got together and we found every single recording of Little Murders that was made between 1979 and 1985. People are buying it, people seem to like it. They like the old stuff better than the new stuff probably, but this is the first real album where I came with a kind of vision of what the album would be like. The band were firing, doing gigs all over the place. With Little Murders, the band doesn't get paid. What we do is, rather than get like $10 for a gig or $20 after a gig, all the money goes into a pot along with any songwriting royalties and stuff, and the pot goes into making the records. I think having a record out or a CD out is a bit more of a tangible thing than, you know, a pizza. You know, how long are you going to keep a pizza for? 20 minutes. This one was the full band. We were playing everywhere, we were tired as anything, we were touring Sydney and Adelaide, we were going everywhere. We released Go. 2018, we brought out High Fab. Danny McDonald in the band and Bruce Minty's left the band. Everything's still financed by the band. We're getting the records out there. I mean, this is record number 7, I think it is. This album came out after we had toured Japan. What comes from Japan in this album is that some of the songs are a bit tougher and a bit faster. We realize our thing that we do is power pop. Playing Japan was so exciting and so illuminating, and it just made me want to write songs, and it made me write songs that want to get people involved.
One of my favourite bars in the world is Poor Cow in Tokyo. It's like a museum to punk rock from around the world. They've got all of Rob's records, you know, in the shelves on the wall.
I'd heard about it. It's Power Pop Central. And I'm meeting Phil Calvert from the birthday party, Boys Next Door. And they're all kind of excited. Fifi comes over and I said to him, I'm Rob Griffiths, I'm in a band called Little Murders. And he went, what? Are you kidding me? They couldn't believe that, you know, that I'm from Little Murders. And the best thing was that he goes, wants to take a picture. So Phil stands up next to me to take it. He goes, get out of the way, Phil.
I think actually Rob went in there with Phil Calvert, and I think they were sort of interested that Phil had played in the Boys Next Door, but the birthday party or anything after that was sort of like, can we get back to getting Rob's autograph?
Get me down to the Japanese bar. I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to.
That was very exciting. So the next year, I went to a thing called the Halloween Ball in Tokyo, which was like 52 bands in 2 days. And then someone says, you got to do a tour here. I said, oh, can we do a tour? So we did a tour. It's like taking your family on holiday. It was just nuts.
Very, very, very good fun. You know, very low budget. It's very intimate most of the time in Japan. So, you know, you're quite often playing on the floor and there's people grabbing at you.
Yeah, very close.
You know, and they're very enthusiastic.
52 bands at a rock and roll show. 52 bands.
This came out maybe a year before Dramonorama, but it was just a recording of a cassette that we did before we even played our first gig. And then this went so well, we actually went in and recorded a 10-inch album. So, and we're still using pictures of ourselves when we're younger because we're keeping ourselves hidden. This is highly Japanese influence, so much so that I knew the first thing I needed to do was take the fiction Japan.
For me, the most exciting thing was sitting down on the drum kit with the fiction and playing the song Take Me, I'm Yours. I think that is a fucking great song, and I love that opening, and I love playing that song.
We weren't expecting the response to the fiction. That raw energy, that idea of having sort of like a simple 2-3 chord pop song.
drop tonight. Turn your pretty colours black and white.
The first time I started searching and looking on the internet, I found that our music was out there. I would get orders from around the world. College radio in America had me on their playlists. There was a compilation released in Spain, Edinburgh. I have loved your band since the 90s. Poland, I always bought all your records. Dig for Plenty would have sold more in Germany. The new album is selling well in Finland and Sweden. And if you take something like the old stuff, Japan's still buying it all the time. As it grows, I found that there were pockets of people all around the world that really like Little Murders.
If you look at when sort of Rob's come back into the fray, it's at a time where the power's put back into him with the internet and he can manage his own marketing.
One of the main reasons that Facebook has survived is because bands and artists see it as a relatively cheap and free form of advertising, and Rob uses that really well and constantly tries to keep a buzz around the Little Murders even when they're not doing anything, which is fantastic.
He does all the right things, like he connects with the right people and he does the least possible but all the necessary things required to keep a band going.
When I went to the US, I met up with the guys from a band called the Eddies who had recorded a song I wrote for them called Strange in the House. Anyway, they invited me to come and record this song with them. And it was a song I wrote that I don't even remember writing. Since I began, I write songs, and really, if you write songs and you don't sing to someone, what are you going to do with them?
Rob has an incredible knack for melodic pop music, and Rob has an incredible gift for creating those lyric situations where there's obviously an angle and there's obviously a mood, but people can take that with them.
He's done a lot with 3 or 4 chords, hasn't he? Really, he's got a knack for penning, I guess, a succinct little pop song with a hooky chorus and a very British verse.
I think Rob writes songs like We Breathe. Like he just does it. He's like a Polaroid songwriter. He's just like snap, snap, snap. And it challenges the band to say, all right, so how are we going to do this in a different way? Like how is the fiction going to sound different to Little Murders?
That person who wrote that song, those songs, is the same person. I'm probably doing the same thing. I'm still doing the same thing. I was going to be a painter, you know that. I did have an exhibition once. But, you know, once you pick a guitar, what can you do? You're lost. Your song doesn't mean anything until it's actually out there. The only 2 ways to get them out is make records and to perform live.
He's a kid that grew up in the punk era. He burst out, you know, with some recordings, early 78. And even though that band split up, it didn't stop him continuing to do, you know, his thing for all of that time.
One of the reasons that Rob has kept the band going is that his attitude has always been, I really enjoy this. I'm not going to get caught up in the, oh, I've signed a publishing deal and da-da-da and I'm leaving my job and things like that. He's always kept a sensible balance between the band is great and if they make some money, let's put into some recording or let's put into going overseas and playing some gigs.
I can't give up music. Well, did I give up music once? No, I don't think so. I got too many guitars to give up. What am I going to do?
Although his bands have kind of morphed from member to member and people have dropped off and people have joined and maybe I'm the 50th bass player he's played with and maybe you're the 48th guitarist he's played with. Yeah. But he's always kept that momentum going, I think, and it's been more about the songs and the whole Little Murders thing more than the individuals to some extent. You know, it's driven us and driven and propelled that band to continue 40 odd years later than when it began.
They love it. That's their secret. They fucking love it. You can tell that they love it. All their sounds are fucking organised. They know what they're doing up there. Bang. We have a show.
It was just the heat. It's hard to express how hot it was on that stage. You know, and people are, you know, say you got to take it careful, you're a bit old now. You know, my dancing's pretty basic. I'm just marching, as people like to make fun of. I did a few jumps because it was a special, and I know you're filming. Afterwards, you know, you lose a bit of confidence. I was very worried because if I'd done any damage to my head, that could be the end. I could be dead. But this would be good to, you know, die somewhere cool on stage.
Is the Little Murders longevity about Rob, or is it simply a collective desire to continually write and record songs? Figuring out how to survive as an artist is one thing, but universally, it's really about getting your art, your songs out there. It's that simple. And importantly, your age has nothing to do with it.
Things are scary, you can't stop though, you know, like, and when do you stop?
Okay, cut.
For a band who have been going for that long, they still rehearse once a week in Rob's garage. And that to me is incredible. It's a commitment to Rob's drive and the way he just thinks that that's the way it should be. And if you want to be a band, you practice once a week and you play heaps.
Well, Little Murders, the only mod band that's just continued to flourish. And he's just never lost the drive.
He's always had self-confidence and self-belief. And I think because he just wanted it to happen, he just makes it happen.
Wouldn't be here playing with him 40 years later if I didn't think that he was a good artist.
When people ask if he's English, that he puts it on a lot.
Well, he's got staying power, that's for sure. Emphasis on staying, possibly outstaying.
God bless him, because he's an inspiration to all of us.
You know, if you want to get up and dance, you're going to have a good night, you go and see Little Murders.